Welcome to the episode of Locked In. In this episode, I'm going to be talking about the Sensah SRX Pro Groupset, as well as the State Bike rebranded version of this. So if you're looking for an affordable 11-speed drivetrain, please stay tuned. So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the specs and features of this Groupset, price, and my final thoughts. But before I get started, I'm going to be talking about the Sensah Groupset as well as the added parts that you're going to get in the State branded rebrand of this group that was on the State Bike All-Road that I did ride. For a full review, if you want to check that video out, links will be in the description below. So I'm going to be talking about this in a few different components because essentially, if you're going to just order the Sensah shifters and derailleurs, those you can get on Amazon, and I'll put that in the description below as well. Or you can order a complete group set, which is currently sold out when I'm making this video, but if it is active, I will be linking that from State Bicycle because it is essentially a complete drivetrain from them as well. So let's get into specs and features. Now, the Sensah SRX Groupset, or the State branded Groupset, is going to be spec'd with an 11-speed drivetrain. The shifters and the rear derailleur have a max capacity, as far as what I've seen on AliExpress, as an 50-tooth max tooth cassette. Now, the State Bike Groupset does ship with an 1142 because they did feel that it did shift better with that compared to the larger spec that is offered on AliExpress. Next, you get into the shifters. Those are essentially a double tap style shifting logic like SRAM, but is a single shift lever. So the braking and shifting is done by the same lever, kind of like Shimano is with their main paddle you use to upshift. Now, this drivetrain is designed around a one-by system, which means the left shifter is a dummy lever essentially and does not contain any components to shift up. So those are the specs on the Sensah group if you're just getting the shifters and derailleurs. Now, getting on to the extra parts you do get with the State Bike Groupset, you are going to get an external bottom bracket style crankset with a 42-tooth chainring, as well as an 11-to-42 cassette, an 11-speed chain, and a set of single piston flat mount calipers. And lastly, it does come with a set of 6-bolt 160mm rotors. So let's get into price. Price for just the shifters and derailleur from Amazon is currently at $149. And obviously you can get this from AliExpress. The State Bike Groupset, when it does come back in stock, which I have confirmed with their co-founder, it is going to be still listed at $350 for all those components listed. Again, that is a crankset, cassette, brakes, rear derailleur, and shifters. Now let's get into my final thoughts. Some of these points I have made in the review of the State Bike All-Road, but I will be going over a few things and adding some nuances as well since I've used this group set a little bit more since then. First off, everyone's going to ask longevity, durability, how does it feel, that kind of stuff. From the initial research that I've done, because I have been interested in this group set prior to getting this bike, I have seen some durability issues with the road bike group set, which is a 2x system. Now, on most drivetrains that I've ridden, the left shifter does take a little bit more work to actuate. So it does make sense that if you're going to have an issue of something breaking, it is going to be something that's going to be under higher stress like the left shifter would. Your right shifter does need to do a lot less, and it has a lot smaller increments. So I think durability-wise, you're less likely to have any issues with this group set using a one-by system since you're only essentially having one shift lever. Now, the caveat of this whole entire system is, yes, it isn't as proven, but that's the price you're paying because you are saving a substantial amount of money on this whole component set no matter which direction you get. Keep in mind, I can't even get a set of SRAM shifters for the price of the shifters and derailleurs like the Sensah group. So depending on what you're looking for and what's important to you and realistically what kind of bike this is going on, that may or may not be an issue, or it's worth the risk. And lastly, my bike I actually used was a essentially photo shoot unit that was already kind of used and ridden before I even got it, so it even had additional miles based on the miles that I put on it. And I didn't get to keep the review unit that long. That bike is so in demand, I actually had to ship it out to a photo shoot later, so I probably put about 150 miles to 200 miles on there. I don't know how many miles were used during the photo shoot, so I can't speak to the total miles on the group set, but it was flawless for me while I had the review unit. Now let's get on to shift quality. I think this group set shifted really well. Now granted, it was lower mileage when I received the group set, but I was really happy with the shift quality. Again, I was able to take this up to a 13% grade, steep punchy climb where I just slapped for a couple of gears and it responded really well. Again, that was with the 1142 stock cassette. I'd imagine the shifting at the bigger cassette wouldn't be as crisp because it is essentially elongating or using that rear derailleur a lot more or stretching it, but honestly, I was really happy with it. The rear derailleur clutch seemed to work really well. I didn't hear any audible chain slap when I was riding the bike around, but keep in mind that does not have a lockout, so when you are removing the rear wheel, it isn't as easy as removing a rear wheel off a SRAM rear derailleur because it does have that lockout button. It wasn't the end of the world. It was still easy for me to remove the rear wheel, but it wasn't as easy as a SRAM unit. Now, since you can shift and brake with the same lever, there were a few times initially when I was trying to get used to the shift logic that I did actuate the rear brake a little bit, but eventually that issue went away. I never did it after the first, ride or two, and it's something you're gonna get used to as well, but you can technically actuate the rear brake when shifting hard, or depending on how you're riding, you can actually squeeze the lever a little bit while shifting, and again, actuate that rear brake. So it isn't perfect. Now let's get on to the State Bike branded components that come with the kit besides the shifters and derailleurs. First off, the crankset, a very, very stiff unit. It uses an external cup bottom bracket with nice big sealed bearings, so you should have a lot less issues with this, and it should work for a long time. Now, I don't know what the bottom bracket standard is or how easy it is to get a replacement bottom bracket, if it's a SRAM or Shimano style. That I wasn't honestly clear of. The crankset itself does have a standard 110 5-bolt BCD chainring that you can use, so you can easily swap that all the way down to a 34 tooth, or obviously you can go up from there to up to a 52, I believe you can get in a 110 pretty easily. Now onto the cassette and chain. Nothing really to write home about. The cassette was okay for the money, but again, like I mentioned in the video, if it was me, I'd at least spec an 1146 if you're gonna kind of piece this together. Cassette for a little bit more climbing gear. If you want to try out the 1150, again, they do say that it does work with that on AliExpress.com, but I don't have any personal experience with that. But with how much B limit and how the derailleur felt with the 42, I think the 46 is a slam dunk. The 50 may or may not shift as crisp as it has been in my experience. Lastly, the rotors and the calipers. The calipers are a single piston flat mount, which do work, but like I mentioned in the video, they don't have a ton of modulation. What that basically means is when you're doing a steep descent, there's going to be a bite point where you're going to be squeezing on the levers, and essentially the rotors and the wheels are going to lock up and you're going to slide. With a higher end caliper or one that's hydromechanical or as a dual piston at least, you're going to have more room for that to slow the bike down before it's going to lock up and slide, so you have more control when slowing down in those extreme scenarios. But they were fine for standard dirt use and city riding. So let's wrap up my final thoughts with, would I recommend this group set? I honestly would. I think it just really depends on what kind of bike you're putting this on and what demands you really need to worry about. Now, if you are somebody who cleans their bike regularly and is good with maintenance, I think buying a more affordable group set is going to be okay, because you're going to keep that group set more well maintained, which means it should last you longer. Chain, cassette, shifters, etc., etc. Now, if you are hard on your group sets or put your bikes away dirty a lot and leave them sitting like that, I could see this group set potentially wearing out or having more issues sooner than later, but that kind of goes with any group set or any components you buy for your bike. I think the value for money for this complete group set from State, for someone who's going to build a bike on a budget or wants to add a simple one-by upgrade to their current bike, no matter what kind of bike it is, I think this is a great option. State Bike has talked to me and said they may come out with a rim brake version or a road version of this. So you could convert your cyclocross canty bike or a road bike to a simple one-by or an older road bike to simplify the system and again, not break the bank. It really depends on what's important to you. If you have no brand loyalty and you just want an affordable group set that works with a modern 11-speed drivetrain, which does make it more convenient as far as cassette options, as far as depending on what range you want, as well as having that clutch rear derailleur at this price point, is honestly really awesome. So I definitely would recommend it, but again, keep in mind there is some level of risk going with a lesser known component manufacturer. So I hope you like this video. Please comment below if you have any other questions on this group set or State Bike's version of it specifically. I'm on my comments daily and I try to respond to you guys as fast as possible. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram, as well as if you haven't subscribed to this channel already, please do, and give this video a like if you liked watching it, as well as I do have a Patreon in the links below. That is to help support the channel so I can make even more cycling content for you guys. I am trying to make this a full-time YouTube thing, and it really does help out the channel. So thanks for watching another episode of Locked In.